It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday we're talking about expectations on men's selves. And by that, I mean both the thing society teaches men and the thing that men internalize that sets up an unnecessary amount of unhappiness. And this has come both from reading I've been doing, but also individual conversations I've been having that have left me kind of, this seems to be a pattern that's replicating, and it's something that we can do something about. And as we get into this, I caution you, like, please don't knee jerk. Please just take a bit of time and, let these concepts settle, because there's no way to talk about this stuff without hitting some socially programmed third rails. And this is a big part of this, that we talk about undoing it, but we don't really factor in how difficult it is to undo. Because, the same way we set gendered expectations for girls that then girls have to completely unlearn when they get into business, especially if you have to manage people at all, because then there's some places that you can't be nice and understanding. You just have to go, nope, and get it to stick. Men come up against similar walls, kind of in the opposite direction. Because men are trained to either, super excel or collect at the bottom of success, whereas, women tend to populate the middle, which makes sense based on the way men and women are socialized. Men are encouraged to take a lot more risks, some of them stupid. And so the ones that succeed, the risks pays off. The ones that the risk doesn't pay off, well, and it's led to this, belief in some men that women are protected in ways that men aren't. And, I'm going to start first question. If mediocrity, if a, sentence of mediocrity and forced mediocrity is protection, okay. But I don't think that's what most people define as protection. That's a restriction. So let's get into the male side of it. And I bring that up for a very good reason, because that's where we're going to begin, is the construct of femininity and the way men are taught to avoid that as a part of gender identity. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Like and subscribe to this channel if you want to support my content without spending any money. So, it didn't used to be controversial to say that gender identity forms up somewhere between the ages of like 2 and 6, usually around 4. And we see it a little earlier in girls. Now, there are many more clear cultural signifiers for girls than boys, because there's like kids' toys and then there are girls' toys, right? There are kids' games and then there are girls' games. So the obvious signifier is girl world. And parents put stupid bows on their girls' heads and, put girls in dresses. All kids used to wear white dresses because it was easier to change a diaper. But when the pink for girls, blue for boys thing got settled, people loved to program their children into that gendered color scheme. And I remember being utterly miserable. We were flower girls in somebody's wedding when I was, I guess, around 6, but it was a dress and like this pink bow in the middle. And I just remember being so miserable. And, looking back on the pictures as an adult, it didn't look bad, but it just felt coerced. And it was this weird, anything coerced, doesn't matter if it's violent or not, it feels bad. And so because girls' enforced gender identities are so, I should say gender performance, not identity, are so overt, boys' identity forms around avoiding the feminine, So don't cry. That's what girls do, you know? Don't play like a girl. Don't act like a girl, right? We know this. Experts on boys know that the avoidance of the feminine is a very real element of men's development. And nobody's really looked into the impact that has on some people who fall into manosphere thinking, oh, here's this thing and it's super great, but you can't have it. We don't know how much that factors in, but it makes sense that it would, right? Like, here's this, group of angels and they're pretty and, men think that women are just showered with praise and affection and nurturing, and it's not true, but there's no point in getting into the ins and outs of somebody say, oh, you look great today. And that is the opposite of a compliment. That is a dig. That means that, oh, that's an anomaly. You normally look like shit, right? So there's no point in getting into that now because the guys who need to hear it don't believe it. They will not believe it. They are clinging to this idea that women are protected in ways men aren't. And again, if mediocrity is protection, okay. And that's the next part of male programming that I do think really affects men socially, because there's this forced cooperation in girls that does its own damage, because forced cooperation is not cooperation, it's coercion. But boys have this forced competitiveness. The idea that there's this really rigidly enforced hierarchy, again, that's why women are sort of condemned mediocrity and men are sort of condemned to the extremes, and everybody looks at the other and sees the good parts of that without seeing the bad parts of that. And the reality that culture does not see raising children as work that has value to society, and therefore doesn't see that work should be compensated. And so it's like, okay, women, marry someone who makes a lot of money, because if you want to have kids, you'll have to take time off work for, at least 6 months every kid, if you're lucky to have childcare. So, hey, in a world of dwindling maternity benefits, you better have somebody whose income you can live off of for 3 or 4 or 5 or how many people, right? And that women say that this creates financial dependence and therefore greater risk of abuse, which it does. And men say that, well, this creates the idea of men as just a wallet and male disposability, which it does. And this is the problem with narrow gendered expectations and, this lane you can't come out of. But most of the time when you talk about this stuff, it's either only the impact it has on women and only the impact it has on men, and not a holistic perspective where you see the impact on both. Whenever you have a lack of freedom of choice, then, we got a problem for everyone, because everybody's choices are restricted just in different ways. And we're seeing more and more stuff about how one of the things that would really benefit boys in school is to see more men at the primary school level. And this is one that I have trouble getting my head around, because I wasn't gifted. So my grade 3 was a male teacher. Grade 4 was co-taught by a male teacher. We had this system in grade 4 gifted where one teacher would teach some subjects and the other teacher would teach other subjects. And so we had a male and a female teacher. But then grade 6 was a male teacher too. And my grade 7 teacher was male. And so this idea that there aren't many men in elementary school was so odd to me. But then I realized, duh, I was in gifted. It was different. You know, I thought about, okay, how many male teachers were in, how many male teachers did my sister have in elementary school? And I can't think of that many. I can't think of one because my grade 6 teacher ended up getting pushed into middle school. And so my experience was different. And that probably changed my understanding of the roles of men and women. Gifted was also goddamn Thunderdome. So, my experience was not typical. Maybe that's why I can understand guys a little better. I don't know. Or I just listen. But it does matter the roles you see everybody in when you're young. It defines what's normal. Because I would never think twice about a child having a male elementary school teacher or a male kindergarten teacher, because that was normal for me. Little do I find that the whole pedo scare, oh no, that's weird. What the fuck? A teacher's a teacher. Teachers are important. Like, what the hell? That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It's gone so far into these narrow gender expectations that everybody has stopped thinking and everybody's just reacting. And so I have to look at the data and recognize that my reaction is not normal. Well, why is that? Well, because I had an atypical educational experience and I was exposed to a lot of male teachers at an early age and nothing bad happened except terrifying arithmetic drills in the 3rd grade. That has nothing to do with the gender of the teacher. And, firsthand, it shows how those expectations, how the assumptions you make are incredibly different when you're exposed to that stuff as a kid. And one of the things they have a hard time getting is men to volunteer for stuff. The only mentoring organization that still has more men than women participating by a tiny margin is Big Brothers and Sisters. That organization, which is a great mentoring organization. It's a wonderful org. I've done some fundraising for them. They're great. It's 55% male participation in that. And the fact that it's that, that is the highest says something. But why? Okay, it isn't just that men are selfish. Quite the opposite. It's that women have free time, right? So you volunteer, because you're looking for something to do because your kids are getting older, right? Whereas men, if you're not earning money, you're somehow being weird or selfish. And I definitely think that that's one of the things that we really have to change in terms of gendered expectations. Working 80 hours a week is not better. And I say this as somebody who regularly works 11-hour days. So it's not better. It's not good for me. I do it because I have to, and I have to be available for clients at different times of day. But I make sure that, if I work from 9 to 9 on a Thursday, which tends to be my longest day, but sometimes Wednesdays go to 8 as well. And then Twitch goes to 9 p.m. on Tuesdays, I'm fried. If I've got 9 till 9, 9 till 8, 10 till 9 in a week, Friday is Matt Damon, right? You the 40-hour work week exists for a reason. So doubling that, which I used to do when I worked in TV regularly, and now I have an autoimmune disease, right? So this is not better. And this is not women doing it. This is business doing it. And because people are afraid of being weak and therefore whiny and therefore girly, people don't speak up. And I say people because I know that in those male dominated professions, the women who get into them, you have to be tougher, more badass, more aggressive, less emotional, more stoic than any man there in order to be seen as half as good. And it's a bit of a trap. It's never enough. Because if you get aggressive, well, then you're a bitch. If you get stoic, you're an ice queen. If you are, considerate and sentimental, well, you don't have a killer instinct. And so you just have to be everything and you lose your goddamn mind. And then men are like, whoa, we're trapped too. Yes. What I said is there is an opposite thing for every single one of those. Men are trained to be good little factory soldiers or good little productivity coders, but all of that is this training in dehumanization, not learning how to name and sort your feelings, because it doesn't fucking matter. What difference does it make, right? Just maxing out that distress tolerance, but never learning how to actually feel and process the feelings, right? So you get a lot of, addiction, predominantly alcoholism, while guys are going, I'm fine. Men have higher reported happiness levels at, the young adult stage, and yet also a much higher suicide rate. Something's going on here, right? And so that has a devastating effect in interpersonal relationships. Men are not just not taught how to make and keep friends and maintain relations, not even romantic relationships, even friendships. They are actively taught that the skills that are required to maintain those relationships are bad. And that is not the fault of men. And this is where we get into the problem of the feminist messaging, where it's like, do better. Guys, call each other out. Call each other out for what? The same fucking boot camp that every guy was put through? And the guys that ended up doing the calling out, right? That's just male hierarchy all over again. It's not fixing the problem. It's just putting a different coat of paint on the same problem, which is you're either up here or you're down here, whereas women are clumped all together in this prison of mediocre sameness. And any woman who dares to go, no, I'm not fucking like that, gets treated as anomalous and sent for really brutal social correction. So everybody's fucked here. And you get these men, and this is not a criticism, please. This is me saying this was done to them, not something a guy's doing wrong. I had multiple conversations last week where we sort of broke down a guy's self-concept. Not like broke them. Like, let's really take a close look at the story you tell yourself, the expectations you have of yourself. And the number of guys who are, I don't know if you've seen the Fantastic Four movie, but there's a scene where Reed Richards says, in a quiet personal moment, there's always been something wrong with me. And I was like, well, this is a movie for now, because, the juxtaposition between Reed Richards, there's always been something wrong with me, and Superman doing is, I screw up all the time. Saying I screw up is something you do. Something's wrong with me is something you are. And when you start from a point where something is wrong or broken with you, that shades every interaction you have going forward in a meaningful way. There's a lot more blame and shame. There's a lot more trying to fix things. There's a lot less effective listening because your brain's screaming at you, broken, broken, wrong, wrong, right? This is something I had to overcome. And let me tell you, it's real challenging to do that work when the internet is constantly calling you fucking names, because then that, inner voice that you're a work in progress training yourself out of is coming at you from the outside. And that's precisely why why it's beneficial to train yourself out of thinking that way and have people around you who will go, okay, look, you may have some failings, you may have some shortcomings, but here's the things you're good at, because everybody has them, right? And if you don't recognize what you're good at, you end up building a personality the way Elon Musk built his Elden Ring build. There's no point in having 80 in intelligence when there's a soft cap at 60 points. He was so fixated on the idea of intelligence and showing people how intelligent his character is, because this is clearly the best characteristic everybody can ever have, that he showed the world how inept he is at the game and how stupid his character build is. Because if you've only got something like a 20 in vitality or vigor or something like that, whoa, you're wasting 20 points at a point in your experience where you can't afford to waste that 20 points. And a lot of people do that as well because they don't go, okay, I'm reasonably good at this. They'll actually be a 60 in that stat. And they keep developing that skill. They keep putting more and more and more points in because it's never enough. And so you end up with this stupid, unbalanced character. Well, you're wasting skill points in real life. That's not good, right? And so what you want to do instead is you don't have to go, I'm the best at this, right? We have to get out of that expectation where you're at the complete top or you're at the bottom. It's okay to be here because you can get through the hardest games as a generalist, I put just enough points in Arcane so I could use that Dragon Rot spell in Elden Ring, right? Because it helped me in a few fights. And I then played again where I made Arcane one of my key stats. I played a Faith Arcane build. It was really weird, but, I just want to see what would happen. But that's an advanced move. But that is a form of perspective taking as well. And what you want to do is, okay, I don't need any more points here right now. I can say I'm reasonably good at this. It's enough to get by. How can I use this to work on this other thing so that my floor starts coming up some way? So I have less far to fall. And so I don't feel so unprotected all the time. Mistakes are little stumbles, not catastrophic crashes. That is possible. And that's the bulk of the work I do with a lot of clients. So I shouldn't say the bulk, but that's a major pillar there. Is let's use your strength to make your weaknesses less weak. Right? Because we all have them. And sometimes we can just go, okay, I don't have enough to equip heavy armor. My carrying capacity shit in Elden Ring, so I'm not going to wear heavy armor because I don't want fat roll, right? That's the decision making you make based on a clear understanding of your strengths and weaknesses. So you can do reasonably well. You can succeed based in what you're good at, not constantly trying to hide your vulnerabilities. And, not constantly trying to put points in everywhere. That's just, you're going to get a really wonky character that way. You can get through the game, but, it's better to specialize in 2 or 3 skills. And that was something I had to learn the hard way. I spent way too long fixated on my weaknesses, just being, you're too difficult to work with, you're so disagreeable, you're such a bitch, and I spent so much time trying to do things I was not good at and trying to be someone I was not. And is that a path to success? Absolutely not. That's trying to wear heavy armor when you don't have the carrying capacity. I was just fat rolling through life and getting, you have died, right? Or you died. I always forget. I'll have to look that up. Anyway, instead I'm like, okay, I'm going to start playing to my strengths. I'm going to play properly for my class. And that means, yeah, I take the personality tests and I'm above average in agreeability across all people, but that's low for women. Well, fuck me, right? And so it's like, I can't be a proper woman, but I'm good at other things, and I now have objective evidence that my skills here are fine. There isn't some glaring deficit. It's gendered expectations, so fuck it. We're just gonna lampshade that I'm not that. I'm wearing a fucking Rockford Files t-shirt, for God's sakes. What's the Rockford Files? Exactly. And it works better because I'm not spending all my time doing stuff I hate and I'm not good at. And that's really what it's about. I have to recognize it. I have to watch the agreeability, right? It's not my strength instead of personality. Agreeability and extroversion. Oh, fuck. Those two are my Waterloos. The rest, I'm very open to new experiences. I'm, below average neuroses, all that stuff. They don't even call that anymore. It's split. But, I have to be aware of the agreeableness, but I'm not going to go, oh, gee, wow. That's the Princess Sparkle Muffin character. That's where it all went, right? Let's do all the things I'm not good at. Right? That's not me. And it works better. And that's what we have to pivot in terms of men's mental health. Go, all right, this expectation that you are both wrong or broken, but also you have to do better than everyone else, which is something a lot of men believe. Life's not fair, do it anyway. Both are a completely unrealistic expectation, right? If you have these extra challenges, you're expecting you to exceed expectations as well is running up the down escalator. Good managers, good mentors, good coaches go, okay, what's a reasonable expectation for you to set here? Because the way the brain works is not do a moonshot, so, okay, you'll get farther than you otherwise would have. That is logical on paper. It's not the way the brain works. The way the brain works is I can't get to the moon, so I'm not going to take the first step. If something is reasonable, it's like, okay, I can do that. It'll be a bit of a challenge. It'll be a bit of a struggle, but this seems achievable. It's worth trying. There is a reasonable chance of success. Then you're going to do it. And you succeed 75% of the time, right? Then you're motivated because you win more often than you lose. You succeed more often than you fail. And that's how motivation works. That's how improvement works. That's how productivity works. And the reason that a lot of these guys are like, oh, women have it so easy and I wish women could just know what it's like to suffer as a man, and all of these callbacks to being a man is not being a girl. If we could just go, look, don't worry about that. Here's a set of goals I want you to do. Because a lot of these guys just, when you ask them what they want, personally, They start talking about how they want other people to know how bad it feels. It's like, that is what you want for other people. Okay, but what do you want for yourself? They are so in survival mode. They can't answer the question. And if you can't answer the question of what do you want, what's going to make you happy, there's no way to create a coaching plan, to get them that. And so it's just hopeless and despair and misery, and people get wound down and down and down, and welcome to manhood, right? That's why video games work. You can win it. It's achievable. If you start it, there's a reasonable expectation. You can beat it if you put in a little bit of work. Not like life. I hear that again and again and again and again. We can design life to be more like a video game. Okay, some people speed run Elden Ring, but most people when they play Elden Ring, it's like, hey, run right for America. Right? No, you don't do that. No, you'll get stopped. You don't even run straight up mode. You can't. You've got to unlock things before you get that fight. And if you haven't played Elden Ring, you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But you can, it's like running right at final boss without leveling. That's unreasonable, your first attempt, right? Exactly. So if you're trying, and I see so many guys trying to run life that way. They have this big, comprehensive, overly complicated plan where they're going to make $40,000 a month in passive income. And there's no plan to do the work to get themselves there. It's, well, I need people to do it. It's like, well, how are you going to get people without doing any work? Nobody's going to want to work for somebody who's just sitting on his ass all day because you're too exhausted from just the enormity of your existence because everything seems so big you don't know where to start. And unfortunately, a lot of these like online, courses, some, life coaches who charge a way more than I do as a peer counselor, $5,000 a month for somebody to blow smoke up your ass. That's what a lot of those services are. Because who's going to pay $5,000 for someone who's really going to challenge you? Well, I guess there's a few people out there, but usually not. Because if you got $5,000 to burn, you're doing reasonably well professionally. It's all the other things that you need the work on. And that's a scary proposition. Because you have to start adapting the very things that got you as far as you've come professionally. And that has to be done very, very, very slowly. And I'll give you a start. Just when you have a strong reaction, stop. No, actually, when nothing's going on. Just practice sitting there going, how am I feeling? If the answer is just good or bad, tease it out. What kind of bad? What kind of good? Are you sad? Are you frightened? Are you angry? Those are all bad feelings, but they're different bad feelings, right? Are you happy? Are you hopeful? Are you optimistic? Are you excited? Are you curious? Those are positive feelings. They're all different feelings, right? Figuring that out, being able to name your different states helps you not only recognize those feelings in yourself and go, all right, I'm feeling irritated right now. Let's slow down so I don't, be unagreeable. That's my note. That's what I watched. If I'm feeling sad or frightened, let's not push that too hard right now if it's optional, right? It's not, I gotta get tougher. No, toughness happens when you go a little outside of your current tolerance. Not way up here. You're just traumatizing yourself there. And that's not the world making you unsafe. That's you making your experience unsafe by pushing too hard, too fast. And you may think the world is doing it to you, but I guarantee you there are boundaries you can set that you're not setting. Because I was there. Boundaries are fucking hard when you've been taught to be just tough guy, always the one taking the blast, tank through life. And it's so weird that tankies mean something completely different now. I'm a video game tank. Like tankies, it's like, no, that's not me. Why does this word mean two different things? And they're so different, right? But anyway, setting reasonable expectations for yourself. The world can think what the fuck it wants. The world thinks, I'm a stupid baby murdering bitch. Whatever, it's not true. Right? Right? That's the point. That only has power and control over you if you don't have a strong enough sense of who you really are. And you create your plan, you create your expectations based on who you are. Not who you think you should be, not who you think you have to be. Who you are. That's living in reality. That is setting a reasonable expectation so you can be in this part, right? That 75th percentile, right? Because anything higher than that is luck. Honestly, it's luck. And that's why we have men up here and men down here, and they're underrepresented in between. Because if all you're aiming for is here, that's the only option. It's a mirror, right? You end up down here. Reasonable goals, evolutionary, additive. That's the way you succeed. That's the way everybody who's been long-term successful builds it brick by brick, piece by piece, even if they were born relatively wealthy. Everything else is just spin. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Like and subscribe to this channel to support me without spending any money as well. Thanks for watching Manly Monday.